Last week, the MMA Guru called out Joe Rogan over his latest podcast with Ilia Topuria, saying that Rogan's proposed changes to MMA would actually kill the sport. But is that just the Guru being the Guru, or does he have a point? Today we're breaking down some clips of the MMA Guru's reaction to Joe Rogan, so a bit of a reaction, and getting into one of the most important debates in MMA today. At a time when the sports events are being criticised and the entertainment values being questioned, debates about potential rule set changes could actually impact the future of the sport. Let's get into it. Now, starting with the MMA Guru, a lot of people call him controversial, and yes, he is, but there's also a reason why he is the most watched, the biggest MMA YouTuber out there right now. I think underneath all the personal beefs and the rages, there is a guy there with a clear, deep knowledge of MMA. He really understands the structure of the sport and cares about what happens next. And one of the reasons why the MMA Guru has become so popular is because he's willing to ask the questions that most people within the MMA community just won't touch. I do believe that he really wants the sport to get bigger and bigger because he loves the sport. And that's why when he does push back against Joe Rogan's opinions, it's not just for clicks, it's not just for attention, it's because he actually cares about the direction in which the sport is heading. And then there's Joe Rogan, and whether you love him or you think he's out of touch, he's been the voice of the UFC for over 20 years. He's so much more than just a commentator. He's got more people into MMA than anyone else I can think of. Conor McGregor might be in second place, but Joe Rogan's still out there in the lead. He's converted more people into becoming MMA fans through his enthusiasm, those iconic reactions with John Anik and DC, and the knowledge that he does espouse on his podcast and in the commentary. But now, because of the MMA Guru's video, a lot of his suggestions like removing the cage, no stand-ups, have been getting a lot of pushback. And I think that's good. I think it's healthy to have these kind of discussions within the sport. And if any of you have watched my channel before, you'll know that I do stay away from the gossip. It just doesn't interest me. I know that the MMA Guru likes to take deep dives into the personal lives of the fighters. Fair play, that's what he enjoys doing. I just don't have any interest in that. I like talking about fight breakdowns, fight predictions, and the fighters themselves. But this debate between the Guru and Rogan, it did give rise to larger questions within the sport, so I feel like it is worth getting into. And so I've broken down the 5 biggest points of disagreement between the Guru and Rogan, and by the end of the video I'm going to have figured out who's got it right and what's best for the future of the sport. So with that being said, let's dive into the first clip that we're going to react to, and we have to start with this all-time great Roganism of MMA, and it's talking about removing the Octagon and replacing it with, well, let's take a look.
And I think they should be in like a basketball court that's matted up.
So because as we all know, guys, now listen, I've seen a few clips out there. Okay, and I've watched some NBA myself. As we all know, all fights happen on basketball courts, guys.
So unless you've never heard a Joe Rogan podcast before, then you won't know that one of Rogan's favourite topics when it comes to MMA is the surface in which they fight. He wants to scrap the Octagon. He feels like the fence causes too much of an artificial environment. In real fights, you wouldn't be able to hold people against the fence, cage wrestle, or anything like that. And his reasoning behind this is because he wants MMA to replicate a real fight. And this is where the MMA Guru has his first very solid response, saying no matter what situation you are in, a real fight, there will be obstacles you have to work around, there will be things in your way. And let's face it, you can't really argue with this. But on top of Guru's argument, what I'd want to add is the fact that no matter where these people fight, be it an octagon, a ring, a basketball court, or one of those little dome things like karate combat, people are going to use the structure, use what they have to benefit themselves. So unless you are fighting in a vacuum, you're going to use your environment to your advantage. That karate combat example that I just gave, it's not a dome, it's like a bowl. I remember it was Craig Jones did a flying triangle off the side, something that he wouldn't have been able to do in a ring. He might have been able to do it in an octagon, but the fact is that the environment in that situation was able to help him. Same with boxing, the way that fighters lean on the ropes. In MMA, wrestlers can use the fence to their advantage, but also anti-wrestlers can use the fence to their advantage as well. I think the broader question that needs to be asked, and the thing that both Rogan and the Guru didn't really discuss, is whether or not removing the cage would improve the sport, or would it just ruin the strategies that have made it what it is today? MMA has developed around these strategies. Gyms, coaches, they've all put time, decades of work now in strategizing around this environment. And for Rogan just to get rid of it, would that just set the sport back 10 years? No matter what surface the fighters are fighting on, they're going to find ways of bending the rules to their advantage. What might be a cage grab in the current UFC Octagon might be stalling in some other way on a basketball court. So I disagree with Rogan fundamentally on this point. I think the cage works. I think all these intricacies in the games have developed around fighting in the Octagon, and I can't really see a benefit of getting rid of that right now. But going back to talking about fighters avoiding action, let's move on to the second area of disagreement.
You have to stand up by yourself.
I love it. I never thought about that, actually.
No stand-ups, ever. No stand-ups. Unless someone commits a foul. Like, if someone commits a foul and you want to stand them up and take a point away, that's fine. But if the guy's in the bottom and he commits a foul, like if a guy's in the bottom, he gouges someone's eyes on purpose, take a point away, put him right back in the same spot.
I disagree with no stand-ups.
So paraphrasing both of their views, Joe Rogan is an absolutist, doesn't believe that referees should get involved at all when the fighters take it to the ground. He does raise up that Damian Maia being on the back of Kamaru Usman, which is of course an extreme example of when the referee's interference could have really stopped a potential submission. However, the Guru disagrees with this, believing that the referee should be getting involved when the grappling gets dull, stagnant and not much is happening. And look, this all comes down to the degree in which you want the referee to be involved in the fight. And it's a lot more nuanced argument than the previous one about basketball court versus Octagon. And it is very difficult to answer, because how long is too long either in a clinch position up against the fence or a fighter being held down on the ground? How do you know if a submission attempt isn't imminent? Because a lot of people in grappling, they wait for their opponent to make a mistake to panic and then pounce on them and try and snatch up a submission. Is it something that needs to be ironed out in the rules meetings beforehand with each specific fighter? This is a really tricky question, and because it is so difficult to answer, that's probably why Dana White or someone hasn't come out and said, look, these are the rules when a fighter is being held down. It's often left to the referee's discretion, and it's why there's a lot of controversy here. But I see a bigger problem. I think it's because Joe Rogan is so married to this idea, because he's just said it for so long, and backing it up with the idea that he's an MMA purist. Look, that's undeniable. The guy is an MMA purist. He watches a lot of Muay Thai, glory kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. He loves it. He's really into the specific martial arts, and he is a true purist. But from the entertainment perspective, if you are only trying to appeal to the purists, then you just don't have a sport. You've got a niche, a real niche interest there. And I know that the fake hardcore fans are something that really irritates the MMA Guru, people who pretend to love the grappling. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely a percentage of the fans who are really into the grappling, often people who partake in grappling. So wrestlers and jiu-jitsu guys who like MMA will definitely enjoy watching that part of the game. But again, that's a niche part of the audience. To make these sports blow up, you need knockout artists, you need excitement, you need moments. And that's why I do fall on the side of more referee intervention. I look at One Championship and the Muay Thai there. I'm a big Muay Thai fan. For those of you watching who are Muay Thai fans, I do a lot of work with Liam Harrison. We're both from Leeds. I do some presenting for his Hitman Fight League show. But anyway, I look at One Championship and the way that the referees insist on action whenever the Muay Thai fighters are a bit too far apart or being quite passive. The referee doesn't think, okay, you might be setting up an attack here. The referee says, no, fight, get going. That's the culture of Muay Thai. Stand in front of each other and go for it. And I do think the referee needs to maybe take a leaf out of One Championship's book and get themselves more involved. Now, this definitely filters down from the top. Yod Chatri, who's the CEO of One Championship, he loves the action. He pushes the action. He has no problem publicly calling out fighters if they're not pushing the action. And I think we need to see something similar in the UFC. And I've got no idea how easy it would be to introduce these changes, because I know they've got all the respective athletic commissions they have to work with, but I definitely think something could be done. Let me know in the comments below, how easy would it be to get all the MMA referees on the same page when it comes to really pushing the action? But anyway, let's move on. And having spoken about the MMA purists, let's get on to the big one. And it's the argument of the entertainment versus purity. And the MMA Guru clearly falls on the side of entertainment and Rogan leaning towards the purity, the martial arts purist side of things. But what should MMA prioritise? Is MMA a sport that's just meant to determine exactly who the best fighter is on the planet? Or is it an entertainment product that should really be looking to captivate the audience? Again, this is a debate that doesn't have a clear right answer, but I'm going to tell you a story to give my opinion on the matter. Now, I work with a boxing promotion in the UK, GBM. We're on DAZN. And as part of that, we flew over to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia to watch the PFL, who are also on DAZN. Now, I was there with my colleagues who've never watched MMA before, so we all went to the Francis Ngannou Way, and I'll put some videos up on the screen now. It was a great experience over in Saudi, and I was really looking forward to the fight. So we got to the arena, we sat down, we got there for the undercard, and there was so much stalling, so much wrestling where the referee just wasn't pushing the action. And I think my colleagues left after the second fight, which is a real shame, because that co-main event was incredible, and the main event was just Francis Ngannou destroying Renan Ferreira within a round. So it was actually a really good event in the end. But the problem is you just don't have that long to make a first impression. First impressions really count, and if their first experience of MMA is a fight where there's a lot of stalling, the referee isn't pushing the action, then you're never going to win over the casual fan. They're going to go away saying, oh, it's just hugging. You hear that all the time from people who are boxing fans rather than MMA fans. It's just a load of hugging. They don't do anything, push each other against the fence. And unfortunately for the casual viewer, a slow ground game just is not exciting. For me, we have to prioritise entertainment. We have such an amazing product with incredible athletes. Let's make the show, the production, as entertaining as possible. For me, sport is about those moments. And it's a collection of those moments which really get you into the sport. Whether it's Rogan and John Anik reacting to Masvidal's KO within 5 seconds, or if it was Conor McGregor's flawless performance against Eddie Alvarez. Sport is made up of those moments. Joe Rogan might claim to be a purist, but I've never seen him screaming, grabbing DC during a 5-minute stall fest. That just doesn't happen. We need to make sure that MMA is an entertaining spectacle, gathers in the casual fans. That's the only way that the sport will grow. Joe Rogan said it himself, and the MMA Guru said, do not allow Joe Rogan near the ideas room. Joe Rogan said he doesn't care about the entertainment side of things. I personally don't agree with that. I think that he's more just reinstating the fact of how much he loves the martial arts, but he loves the moments, perhaps more so than anyone else. Okay, so we've broken down 3 of the 5 main areas of disagreement between the Guru and Joe Rogan, and I'm leaning towards the MMA Guru's arguments at the moment with a little bit more of a nuanced view. I think there's a bit more development he could have made in terms of what the rule changes should be made for the sport, what Joe Rogan's rule changes would mean for the sport. But I think as it stands, there definitely does need to be some clarification from the top about what the rules are when it comes to referee intervention and stuff like that. And with that being said, let's move on to the 4th point, and it is the 4th area of disagreement between the Guru and Joe Rogan. Let's play this.
I don't think it ever will, and it's not really something I really want to push on the sport right now, but I get it where he's coming from there. But dude, if someone's laying praying, and they're just laying there, and the guy on bottom's like working, but the guy is just hell-bent on keeping them in that position, there are guys that can just really take over this sport and be incredibly fucking dull. All right? Imagine if there was no pressure on Torres Finney to do any level of entertainment. Okay? No pressure, Marab. You just hold him right there. We would have no sport in a heartbeat. So there's idealism, and then there's realism based on your ideas.
Okay, I think this is a really interesting point that the Guru raises, and it does throw into doubt the future of the sport itself if the referees aren't intervening at these times. But again, it's a very grapple-focused view, and I think if we're speaking about fights don't always have to be entertaining, we need to also mention the elephant in the room, which is that stand-up striking can be boring too. So the argument shouldn't be boring grappling against exciting striking. It should be exciting grappling, exciting striking against boring fighting in general. You can look at someone like Shakur Stevenson in boxing, undoubtedly one of the most skilled fighters on the planet, but gets a lot of hate, comes under a lot of fire because of his very defensively orientated style. He doesn't throw all that much, he doesn't get hit, he's not involved in these wars, he uses his fight IQ, intelligence to win fights. So it's really important to make the point that just because these fighters might get stood up by the referee, you could have another Adesanya against Yoel Romero style fight where they just stand off each other, try and point fight, and just edge out a decision victory. And let's face it, that kind of performance just does not serve the fans. And on the flip side of that, you can have really exciting grappling matches, I know that MMA Guru isn't the biggest Merab fan, but I'm someone who I wouldn't call myself the most hardcore grappling fan. I do enjoy it. I train jiu-jitsu. I occasionally watch wrestling if it's a big fight, but I enjoy Merab's style. The relentless cardio, the pressure, the constant takedowns. I think it's good. I don't like the stalling moments against the fence, and that can happen a bit too much, but his ability to throw that many takedowns, to shoot for that many takedowns, is just incredible. And he's probably the worst example of an exciting grappler. You look up the pound for pound rankings, the number one, Islam Makhachev, who the MMA Guru does credit as an exciting grappler. You don't get much more exciting fighting than that. Yes, he's very skilled on the feet now, but you know his aim is to take you down and submit you. And it feels like a ticking time bomb until we get that moment. Renato Moicano against Makhachev in their last fight, you knew it was just a matter of time. As soon as Makhachev got him down, he was just inching towards that Darce. That's the type of grappling we need to be promoting in the sport. That's what we need to be encouraging. I'm not saying you take points off for stalling necessarily, but definitely more intervention. And even on the feet, get the referee more involved. I mentioned the one championship referees. If action isn't happening, if people are cruising, the referee does need to get involved. And it's definitely going to take some penalisation to actually get things moving with this. Fighters will take warnings all day long. We see it with eye pokes, we see it with groin shots and things like that. They'll get away with as many as they can. It's only when the referee starts taking points off that it will actually make a difference. So right now I don't quite know how you'd work taking points off when fights are on the mat. You probably would stand them up. But if they're stood up and still not pressing the action, that's when you'll need to consider taking points off. And look, that makes a lot of sense when you've got one fighter clearly avoiding the action. But in a stalemate like that Adesanya Romero fight, I wouldn't really know where to begin with how the referees can intervene there. So overall, on the fourth point, I both agree and disagree with the Guru here. Yes, we should encourage fighting to be fun, but there's absolutely no guarantee of that. If both fighters decide to stand at range and point fight, you're not going to have the most dramatic finish. For people who appreciate that kind of fighting, it'll definitely appeal to them. But when we are speaking about that casual crossover, it's not going to win over any more fans. Okay, so moving on to the fifth and final point of the video, and this is actually an area in which the Guru and Rogan agree with each other. And it's what happens at the end of the round. Because right now, as you know, you can be locked up in a submission, you can be badly rocked, but as soon as that klaxon goes, as soon as that bell rings, you go back to your corner, you have that minute to recover, then you're out again. Whereas the Guru and Rogan, they disagree with this.
Do we need to fix? I actually wouldn't mind an idea of an MMA fight, and I think this would make some headlines. If you're locked in a submission, no save by the bell. We're adding seconds until you get out of it, and then we can maybe go to the next round. Nor do I mind if someone's got you mounted and is ground and pounding you for it to also carry over into the next round either. I don't mind it. I don't think it will be implemented. I don't think it should. I don't think it's the pressing issues of the sport right now. If you were to ask me like what the problems are with the sport, maybe I'll make an entire video about some problems I have with the sport right now, because there are many.
Okay, so I actually think this is a really good point that MMA Guru suggests. I don't know if it's originally from him or he's heard it somewhere else, but the idea of stoppage time, if you follow soccer, if you follow football, you'll know that at the end of the match, they had a certain amount of time based on injuries and substitutions that took place during the course of a game. And I think something similar could be implemented into MMA. If someone is locked up in a submission, maybe adding 30 seconds, 60 seconds would push people to chase finishes more towards the end of a round rather than cruising, waiting for that bell. I don't know if that could be applied as well with striking. I don't think it necessarily works as well because it's more subjective. If someone's rocked or not, you can't really tell. I don't think you could add time on for that. But definitely if someone's cinched up in a submission, we don't have to end the round and have them start in that position again. We can just keep the clock running for another 30 seconds, 60 seconds, see what happens. I really like that suggestion. And this suggestion by MMA Guru, who is ultimately a fan, leads me to my overall point, which is at the end of the day, MMA is more than just a fight. It is a product. It's a sport with a rule set. So whether you're on a basketball court, in a ring, in an octagon, you're still going to have rule sets regardless. It's a show that depends on a paying audience, whether it's in the arena, the pay-per-view, or on TV. So the overall question should be, why would we accept a less exciting product? It's one that we do need to get to the bottom of. If there is a crisis at the moment with the sport being boring, forget matchups for the time being. Let's talk about the pure action. If stalling happens too much, if there isn't enough excitement on the feet, as fans, we should suggest these kind of rule changes, make it more exciting. As long as it doesn't cheapen the product in any way, the UFC should be all for making a more exciting brand, a more exciting product, and other organisations like the PFL ONE FC, all of these guys who want to get an edge on the UFC should take note for these fan suggestions. But look, at the start of the video I did say that we'd figure out who's right, Joe Rogan or the MMA Guru, and without sitting on the fence, I'm just going to go for the MMA Guru. I think he raises more validated points. I think he's done more research. Look, he's had the chance to react to Rogan's clips and form his arguments. Rogan's just speaking off the cuff. I don't want to excuse him too much. But look, the MMA Guru pointed out Joe Rogan's had these ideas, which are almost like sound bites for him right now. How convinced he is really of them that they would make the sport better, and how much is he just saying it because it's something he's always said? I think everyone's guilty for that. Maybe not having the most fleshed out ideas, but just thinking something sounds good. But I think the MMA Guru suggestions all make sense. I can't really disagree with all that many of them. Like I said, I would just build upon them. But just going back through the original points, I don't agree that we should move on to a basketball court. I'm very much with the MMA Guru with that. And I'm really with the history, the brief history of the sport. The fact that so many strategies, tactics, training schedules have been made around working in Octagon. The next point we made was how long is too long to be on the ground? When should we allow for referee stand-ups? This is more nuanced. I think the MMA Guru tried to make it out to be a bit more simple than it was. I do believe we need more referee intervention. I don't think they should just be there for the safety of the fighters. I think they should be there to promote the entertainment of the product, and not by getting too involved, forcing the fighters to be reckless, but just not allowing the fighters to be passive. We then spoke about my trip to Saudi watching Francis Ngannou and whether or not MMA should appeal to the purists or be an entertainment product, and for the sake of the sport, to create those moments that people remember, that go viral on social media, we need the product to be entertaining. Simple as that. But there's the flip side of that coin, which was point number 4, and it's that fighting isn't always going to be fun. And how do we figure that one out? Just because you stand 2 fighters up who are stalling on the ground doesn't mean it's going to be all action on the feet. And could that involve more referee intervention? We need to find a way to incentivize fighters to go for it even more. And finally, the 5th point about where fighters should end the round, should there be stoppage time? I really like this argument for the Guru. I think it swung me even more in his favour. So overall, I am backing the MMA Guru. I think his points are really good. And look, Joe Rogan's always been a bit of a maverick. It's a reason why he's been wildly successful doing his own thing for so long. But on this one, I am siding with the MMA Guru. I think that some changes to the rule set or some clarifications would be really healthy for the sport. Let me know if you agree. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later.